Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. It is a beautiful, crisp, cool spring day today. And if you notice my voice may sound a little strange, it's because I am down in the sand hills of North Carolina, taking care of a few family obligations. And the pine pollen is so thick, the air is yellow. It looks like yellow smoke everywhere. Everything is covered in about an eighth of an inch deep pine and azalea and dogwood pollen. And it is rough. It is really rough, let me tell you. There is nothing you can do to combat this. You can take herbal antihistamines, you can take over the counter antihistamines. I don't care if you get allergy shots. When it's this thick, it is rough. But, on the bright side, spring has already come in down here. I've been out foraging a little bit. I found poke greens. We call it poke salad in the South. It's actually salad, not salad. It's spelled with a T. It comes from the Old English word, essentially just meaning leafy green vegetables. Poke, as I've mentioned before, is one of my absolute favorite wild foods. I absolutely love poke greens. Unlike many people, I don't just eat them in the spring. I eat them throughout the year, and I'll even eat them raw, which any forager or foraging book will tell you is very dangerous. Don't do it, it's poisonous. Well, I've eaten poke for so many years that I seem to have built up a tolerance to the poison of poke. And when I eat raw poke greens, I also get the herbal benefit of poke being a lymph cleanser and a mild antiviral. So, real good to have around. For you mere mortals, if you want to try poke salad, always pick fresh, tender, smaller spring leaves. The first leaves that come out are the best. Make sure there's no trace of purple in them. The toxicity of poke seems to go along with its purple color, though actually the root is brown and it's supposed to be the most poisonous part. I use it medicinally, of course. The berries are a dark purple when they form, and most people who get sick from eating poke get sick from eating the berries, not the greens. So harvest your greens, and most foraging books will tell you to cook them in 3 changes of water, bringing the water up to a boil, pouring it off 3 times before frying them in some grease. I find that utterly ridiculous. But if it's your first time eating poke greens and you have not been eating poke greens all your life, like I have, follow the instructions, be safe. Um, According to the late herbalist Michael Moore, as little as 1 ounce, I think at one point he even said a half ounce, he said it both ways, of a strong poke root tincture could be fatal, fatally toxic. But I can find really no evidence that anyone has ever died from eating poke greens. The main documented cases of people getting sick from eating poke were usually kids who ate the berries and it made them throw up. That's it. So I don't consider it a really scary or dangerous poisonous plant. I consider it an excellent medicinal herb and an excellent source of food. And like I said, I will even eat the greens raw, which you should not do. But if I did cook them, I just fry them directly in bacon grease and eat them with a little vinegar. They're delicious. If I was serving them to someone else, I would probably boil them and change the water once. But most books will tell you 3 times. So take that with a grain of salt, and always put a little salt on your poke because greens don't taste very good without salt. The other thing I've been foraging a lot is bugleweed, ajuga repens, one of my absolute favorite herbs. Culpepper said of ajuga, it doth powerfully shrinketh the liver. It is a member of the mint family that is a bitter, and it's an excellent tonic for the liver and digestive system. And really, really great herb. What's really interesting about it is it's also a cardiotonic herb. I've discussed this in previous episodes, ways to use bugle to lower blood pressure, to slow and regulate the heart rate. It's just really nice to pick a flowering spike of bugle and just eat it, or put it on a salad and eat it. It's just it tastes like arugula. I mean, it's bitter, but it's not intolerably bitter. We'll actually talk about a bitter herb today that is, to most people's taste, intolerably bitter. That's going to be Green Chiretta or Andrographis. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But bugle is just as bitter as, say, radicchio. I mean, it's no big deal. And it is actually very nice in a salad. It's a member of the mint family. It has pretty blue flowers and deep green or purple leaves. Eating that flowering stalk has sort of the same physiological effect, at least in the way it feels, as drinking a glass or two of wine. You just kind of relax, take a deep breath, your heart rate slows a little bit, you just feel good about yourself and the day. And so I really enjoy it when the bugleweed comes in. You're also starting to see an interesting herb, kind of along those same lines, showing up at garden centers and grocery stores as an ornamental. It is Callias. Callias, yet another member of the mint family. It's the plant with the wildly colorful leaves. Callias is an excellent muscle relaxer, pain reducer, slightly narcotic sedative herb. It is actually, it's far more bitter, by the way, than bugle. It is a very bitter plant. And when you see it there as at the garden centers or the grocery store, where we see it as a potted plant, just remember, you don't know what that plant's been sprayed with. I mean, you don't know what kind of fertilizer they're using, what kind of chemicals. So I would not recommend buying one and eating the leaves off of that plant. You can tincture the leaves, you can eat them. Supposedly, you can smoke them. I really don't know a lot about that. But eating the leaves, just a handful at a time, gives that muscle relaxant, sedative quality that's really very pleasant. I would consider this a necessary plant to have around for first aid, for like, when you have a pinched nerve and you're in agony. You cannot sleep. You cannot sit comfortably. You cannot think because you got a pinched nerve like in your neck, and it's just the most agonizing, extreme pain. That's a really good time to have some Collius on hand. This is what I do. I just take a pinch of the leaves, a handful of the leaves. You grab the freshest leaves up toward the top. Okay. You try to pinch it off at a joint so it'll produce more leaves where the plant kind of forks. I'm thinking with each pinch, you're grabbing 4 to 6 leaves. And so I would grab maybe 8 to 12 leaves and eat them for a regular dose, and that will relax those muscles and you get some relief. Now, this is the caveat, especially with the Collius. This herb has not been researched. I seem to be one of the only herbalists to ever have tried this herb and documented its uses as a sedative, slightly narcotic painkiller. As far as I know, no one has ever done any clinical studies or trials. I cannot tell you it's safe to use this herb. I'm going to tell you it's probably not safe to use this herb, so don't use it to cover myself legally. Remember my standard disclaimer. Don't do anything I said. No statements have been approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor, and I won't even promise you that everything I tell you is true. So you need to do your own research and verify anything. So I'm going to tell you, as with the Collius and the Bugle and the Pokeweed, could be dangerous, could be toxic, could be poisonous. Uh, I'm not recommending that you use them, but I use them, and I find them to be very nice plants. And this is the time of year when they're coming in, so it's really very nice. And the other nice thing about the ajuga the bugleweed, is it is one tough, hardy plant that spreads like crazy. I love herbs that spread like crazy. People complain about comfrey and mint and various plants because they take over your garden. Hey, these are medicinal, useful. In case of mint, a wonderful herb to throw in salads and soups. And I mean, if you want to try something really good, I've mentioned this recipe before too. It's a wonderful old Greek dish. I don't remember the name of it. It includes eggplant, onions and garlic, tomatoes, and mint. Mint is the herb that's used to season this dish, and the combination of eggplant, garlic, tomato, and mint is phenomenal. So I don't mind herbs that spread and go crazy because it just always gives me an abundance to harvest and use. What I can't eat right away, what I can't include in food, I can dry and use in tinctures and teas and everything, oils and salves and you name it, the whole gamut, later, at a later date and time. That's a really good thing, in my opinion. You just don't want it to get out of control. And so sometimes I will plant spreading herbs side by side so they kind of fight each other and don't allow each other to spread very much. Other times you plant them where there's going to be a natural barrier, like a walkway will stop their spread. You can't actually put a barrier in the ground, like it's some old barn tin or something, or I mean even a board, or a board will rot eventually, but something that's going to be a barrier in the ground and dig down and put it there. So like mint, which kind of spreads by runners or stolons or whatever you want to call it. You can't pass through there. That's how you hedge in bamboo. Bamboo's a little tricky. It can actually grow under a lot of things. It can grow a long way. You want to do trimmings. You want to trim the rhizome. You go around the edge with an edger and kind of you end up with like this island of bamboo, and you're not allowing it to grow beyond that point. You have to do it two, sometimes four times a year, depending on what variety you're growing. But any plant, really, for the most part, can be controlled that way, perhaps with the exception of wisteria or kudzu. And if I had to choose one plant to have, it would be kudzu. Kudzu is edible. It's excellent herbal medicine. You can make wine out of the flowers. The leaves actually have protein. They're like a spinach type green. It actually has protein. And I mean, for a survival plant to eat, kudzu cannot be beaten. Of course, you cannot legally plant kudzu because it's an invasive weed. Wisteria, on the other hand, is considered an ornamental. And in my opinion, wisteria is like 10 times worse than kudzu. When wisteria grows like crazy, it sends these vines just running for you. I mean, I have was doing some yard work maybe a year or two ago, and I found some wisteria that popped up. I wonder where this come from, and I'm sort of pulling it, and it had a vine running under probably 4 inches of mulch over 50 yards back to the parent plant. It had literally sent that vine out half a football field before it popped up and found light and started trying to grow itself a new plant. I really hate it. I'm allergic to it, for one thing. It's it does have some edible values. Some people eat the flowers. The rest of the plant is poisonous. I mean, it's leguminous. It's in the bean family, but it's one of those poisonous beans. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it smells really nice. I mean, I can't deny that wisteria smells great, but it wrecks my allergies. So, and it is just like the worst thing to battle in a yard if you were trying to get, things cleaned up and get the vines out of your bushes and get everything taken care of. I would much rather have kudzu because I can keep kudzu under control simply by eating it. And if you have goats and kudzu go together like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, goats love kudzu. It is like the best feed for them, being high in protein and really nutritious, and they will keep that vine under control. Goats will eat wisteria, but it could poison them. I don't know. I've never heard of a goat being poisoned by wisteria, but I wouldn't doubt it. So anyway, that's just an aside. But speaking of asides, I got a lot of good feedback on last week's show. People really enjoyed my recipe for eggs cocotte. Like I said, it's so simple, it's so inexpensive. It's like the ideal breakfast to make that you can throw any fresh spring vegetables and herbs into and just enjoy it. I had an egg cocotte, well, it was just a couple of days ago, and I mean, it was so delicious. And it was, I mean, think about cheap. One thing about a French chef, a French kitchen, nothing is ever wasted. You will see French chefs, and they do this just elaborate trimming and peeling, and everything looks just perfect. You're thinking, what about all the scraps? What about all the waste? Well, it's never wasted in a French kitchen. And being almost half French, and my taste being very French, and my most of my cooking knowledge coming from the French tradition, that's sort of the way I cook. And in any French kitchen, even professional French kitchen, there is no waste. If someone's trimming vegetables and they start throwing stuff away, or they're trimming meats and they start throwing stuff away, they're fired. And oftentimes without a warning at all. They are expected to know. You take all those vegetable scraps and they go in the stock pot. Usually they're roasted in the oven a little bit, browned up, and they go in the stock pot. They do not go into the compost bin. No, no, no. They do not go into the trash can or the pig bin, as they call it in England. They go into the stock pot. Now, after they have given all they got in the stock pot, then they're strained out and then they're going to the compost. That's the way it works. All the bones go in a stock pot, all the vegetable scraps go in a stock pot, everything. A lot of people are surprised when they see fried chicken recipes in France. We think of fried chicken as a southern thing, but every culture that has chickens has a way of frying it. So I'm not talking like KFC here. I'm talking a chicken fried in oil, cut into pieces one way or the other. The French will usually pull the skin off. My grandmother pulled the skin off a chicken. I know that's like heresy in the South, not to have skin on the chicken, right? Well, she learned to cook from her paternal grandmother, who was of the French tradition. Pull the skin off the chicken. Then she would bread it, then she would fry it, and we'd have southern fried chicken with no skin. Well, what do the French do with that skin? They fry it like pork rinds. They make cracklings. Even that skin that in most, say a health conscious kitchen where someone's taking the skin off the chicken, they're just throwing it away. Never, never, no. That skin is going to be fried and turned into cracklings to go on top of a salad. Nothing is ever wasted. Well, one thing in the French tradition we do is we seed and juice our tomatoes and peel our tomatoes too. I don't usually peel my tomatoes unless I'm making cooked tomatoes. I don't mind the skin on raw tomatoes. I don't mind the seeds in raw tomatoes. A lot of times they've got a nice, that pulp is very tangy, very acidic. But, I had a recipe where I need to seed the tomatoes. So you just cut them in half crosswise, squeeze them, and take your finger and just scoop everything out of the little crevices where the seeds are. Well, I will seed them and squeeze that pulp into a glass. Glass goes into the refrigerator. If I want some tomato juice for some reason, say I'm making a Bloody Mary, right? Yeah, I put my tomato juice in there. Well, I also throw in the pulp and the seeds of the tomato. Well, the other day I was making the egg cocotte and I was looking around. I thought, well, what do I have? Oh, I've got some tomato pulp sitting in a glass. I took a spoonful of that tomato pulp and put it on top of that egg, a sprinkle of basil and rosemary, and a little feta cheese. 5 minutes cooked in simmering water. It was ready to go, and it was one of the very best meals I have ever had. I'm not kidding you. What most people would throw away, the pulp of a tomato, one spoonful of it, with a little feta cheese, a few, Italian herbs, a little salt and pepper, and one egg, and that was it. And it was absolutely delicious. And on that one, I normally butter the ramekin. I actually did olive oil, so I had that flavor of the olive oil as well. Super cheap, super. I mean, literally, you're cooking with what most people consider garbage, and you're still coming out with an excellent dish. So people seem to enjoy hearing about the egg cocotte and thinking about the different things you can do with it. And one person reminded me, hey, back when you first started the podcast, like 70 shows ago, you mentioned fermented foods. And if anybody wanted to hear more about fermented foods, you would do a whole episode on it. Well, I'm not going to do a whole episode on it because I do want to talk about Andrographis, Green Chiretta, whatever you want to call it. But why are fermented foods so important? Well, first of all, modern research has verified what humanity has kind of sensed all along. You say about something you have a gut feeling, right? You trust your gut. Well, it turns out there's a huge connection between the brain and the gut, the intestines, our digestive tract. And really, more than half of our immune system is centered in our gut. Our gut health is dependent on gut flora, fungi and bacteria that live in our bodies, that break down our food, and make that food available for us as nutrition. If we don't have healthy gut flora, we can't get most of the vitamins out of our food. I mean, they're literally little fungi or fungi. Why is the mushroom popular? He's a fun guy, right? They are literally processing our food and turning it into something we can actually use. Without our gut flora, we will die. That is also, like I said, half of our immune system minimum. That gut flora, that good bacteria, probiotics we call it these days, attacks the invading organisms that make us sick and keeps us healthy. Really, the fungal kingdom, the fungi and the bacteria are the first life forms on Earth. They live in relation with other things. I mean, you will see, if you go lift up some pine straw or grass, you will see mycelium. The mushroom has sent its mycelium. This is its underground growing apparatus miles throughout the soil. And it's taking nutrition from one place and moving it to another place. A lot of times the fungi give nutrients to a tree, and then the fungi live off the tree. The tree cannot survive without the mushroom. The mushroom cannot survive without the tree. That little mushroom cap that pops up, that's just a fruiting body. Everything's going on underneath the surface. Well, in many ways, our gut flora are like the good guys, as if you think about how viruses attack us and invade us and use us to replicate. Our fungi and bacteria that live in our guts and really on every cell of our body and in every cell of our body, they're on the surface or on the inside, they're everywhere. They're the good version of what a virus does. They live in us. They need us for survival and replication. And in exchange, they provide us nutrition and immune support. They protect us and they feed us in order for us to host them. It's a symbiotic relationship that has developed over millions of years. And if you were to really break it down and look at what is the human and what is the fungi and bacteria living in the human, there's actually more fungi and bacteria than there is human cells, than there is actually us, the tissue that makes up us. We would be water, we would be fungi and bacteria, and what's left is us, and really it's not that much. So that's how important our gut health is. And that's why it's so bad for people to constantly be taking antibiotics, because antibiotics are designed to kill bad bacteria, right? They also kill good bacteria. They also kill good fungi. And every time we take an antibiotic, we are knocking down the good guys along with the bad guys. And, there's so many people out there, especially women, who get just recurrent bladder infections and cystitis and all that, just constantly, and yeast infections and all that. It's because, and every time they do, they go to the doctor, and the doctor gives them an antibiotic. They take the antibiotic, the infection clears up, they knock down their own natural immune system, their own natural gut flora, and everything else flora. I mean, like everywhere in the body, in the urinary tract, in your skin, everything. And next infection comes back even stronger because they got less of their natural immunity, less of their natural flora to fight it. And it creates a cycle where they're essentially constantly infected and constantly having to take antibiotics that make the infection worse and worse and worse every single time. And that is why when we get sick, best thing to do is try to treat ourselves first before we go to a doctor and get an antibiotic, because doctors literally hand out antibiotics like candy. They know their patients expect it. The FDA, the CDC, the World Health Organization keep saying, stop it, don't do it. You're creating superbugs that we can't treat. It doesn't matter. Doctors will still give you an antibiotic for a head cold, knowing it's not going to help you one bit. So, what can we do? Well, we actually get our immune system from our mothers when we're born. And most of that immune system is transmitted through the birth canal via bacteria and fungi. We come into the world totally immersed in bacteria and fungi, and then whether it's the antibiotics we're taking or the chlorinated and fluoridated and chlorohydrated and whatever, chloraminated, I guess chloramine is a variant of chlorine that's actually far more toxic, and it's the main thing used in municipal waters these days, or the antibiotics in meat. I've discussed before how our meat is not being raised the way it should, and so it's being soaked with antibiotics to prevent infection, and we eat it and we get the antibiotics. Or the water we drink, all the water we drink in a municipal system. I'm so glad I have a well in the mountains, a deep well. It's full of the remnants of all the pharmaceuticals that people take, and then their waste is flushed down the toilet and ends up right back in our drinking water. Our water plants do a real good job at filtering out all the human waste and such from our drinking water, but not the pharmaceuticals. So even if you're not taking a bunch of antibiotics, you're probably ingesting antibiotics without even knowing it. So the best thing we can do is fermented foods. Fermented foods are, well, an ancient means of preservation, obviously. Long before canning, people pickled. Fermented foods are delicious. The best foods are often fermented foods. Fermented foods include pickles and sauerkraut and kimchi and everything you would think of, right? But also beer and wine and cheese, sourdough bread, salamis. Okay, what is my favorite food? It's salami. I can go absolutely crazy over cured sausage. I'm a nut about charcuterie. All kinds of fermented vegetables, more than I could ever imagine to tell you about. Sour cream is a fermented food. Buttermilk's a fermented food. Even tea, the leaves of tea. The leaves of tea are fermented to develop those flavors that we enjoy in tea. Tobacco, even. Many tobaccos, like cigar tobaccos, are fermented. So many things are fermented. Fermentation is a matter of inoculating a vegetable or milk or wine or whatever with good bacteria or fungi, and often both, so that it preserves the food and uses that as its medium for reproduction. Bread yeast is a form of fermentation. Sourdough bread is wild bread yeast and a little bit of the acetylene or vinegar bacteria that gives it that tang. So many of our very best foods are fermented. And then you have your very popular beverages these days like kombucha. Kombucha is a fermented tea. You know, the tea beverage is brewed with sugar, and then this SCOBY symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast is what it's called is introduced to the tea, and it ferments it. Gives it a vinegar type tanginess as it ferments. And usually we want to try to stop it before it gets really super sour, and add some fruit to it or something. So it makes a nice, pleasant beverage for us. That is absolutely full of just countless types of bacteria and yeast that when we drink a glass of kombucha, just fills our bodies and replaces a lot of that gut flora we've lost. If you go to the drugstore and you get like probiotic capsules, they may have two or three probiotic bacteria in them. In one glass of kombucha or one glass of kefir, however you want to pronounce it, there's both water kefir and milk kefir. You're talking thousands of different types of bacteria and yeast that are far, far better for you. Yogurt is fermented food in America, and it's really interesting when the Dannon Company started marketing this in the 70s. They were talking about these studies of this little Russian village where the people ate yogurt and they lived to be over 100 years old and they were really virile late into their old age. Actually, turns out it wasn't yogurt, it was milk kefir. That milk kefir is full of lore and legend. It actually goes back to ancient Islamic tribe that had this milk kefir. These are little like SCOBY type grains of yeast and bacteria that are used to inoculate milk. And they were living long and they were, really healthy and everything. And the Russian government, I'm not sure if it was Soviets yet or if it was still under the Tsars. Anyway, they sent a spy to actually marry this Muslim king. Her wedding gift that she asked for was the kefir grains, and then she ran off and stole them and took them back to Russia. And so this little village in Russia where these people were living into their hundreds and being virile into their 90s and fertile into their 90s were actually drinking milk kefir. Well, you can go right now on you can go to Etsy or eBay or Amazon, or you can go down to your local health food store, and you can probably for $2 or $3 or even free get some kefir grains and the instructions on how to use them, and you can start making your own. I like to make water kefir because where I live in North Carolina, raw milk, unpasteurized milk is more illegal than most drugs. You you could easily just walk down any street and find somebody to sell you some pot. You can't get somebody to sell you raw milk. And if the government finds out, they'll come after you like with SWAT teams. And I'm not kidding, okay? Raw milk is the most natural thing on earth and really good for us. And the government treats it worse than they do fentanyl or, hard drug. So this is like the gamut of fermented foods. So where do you start? Okay, you can start at the simplest, most basic place with sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is nothing more than fermented cabbage. It is lacto fermented. All that means, you take a good, nice head of cabbage, take off the outside leaves, chop it up as fine as you like. If you like a shredded cabbage, use a grater. If you like a coarser, just chop it with a knife. Put it in a bowl. I'm just say an average head of cabbage. What is that? About 3 pounds. Once you take out the core and the outer leaves, you're probably talking maybe 2 pounds of cabbage. You're going to put 2 tablespoons of non-iodized salt over that. I usually do it in two batches. Do half, then do the other half. Put it in a big bowl, and with your hands, work the salt into the cabbage until a lot of water comes out of the cabbage. It makes its own salt brine as it kind of breaks down. Pack that into any container you like, and make sure it's packed down tight so that the brine comes up over the cabbage and the cabbage does not contact the air. Now, there's so many different ways to do this. You can get really nice fermenting crocks that have a weight that holds the cabbage down and the brine comes up over the weight. You can use a 5-gallon bucket and put a plate on top and a weight on top of that plate to press it down. You can get jars that have little fermentation air locks like we use in wine brewing. I normally will put it into a large jar, pack it down as hard as I can with my fist, get all the brine coming up. Then I'll take the cores of the cabbage that I've cut out and press them down on top. So all the shredded cabbage is under and the cores are mostly under. And those outer leaves I put on top of the cores. And then I will put a little ramekin on there with a little weight and it keeps it pressed down. Within a few days, lactobacillus is going to colonize sauerkraut and it's going to begin to bubble. So you have to have a way to let the carbon dioxide out without letting any oxygen in. Oxygen will cause it to mold. So any way you can keep that kraut under the brine is fine. In about 10 days, you have sauerkraut. Take everything off the top. I usually have like some moldy chunks of cabbage on top, where I put those outer leaves, pull them off. Everything underneath is fine. If you're doing this with like an airlock or a really fancy system, you're not going to have any mold or anything. But whatever you do, just you take your sauerkraut, and if it's sour enough to your taste at that point, put it in the refrigerator. It will slow the fermentation. And for months and months and months, you can eat a spoonful of sauerkraut a day and get all those great probiotic bacteria. If it's not sour enough for your taste, let it go a few more days. Now, one way to really speed it up and to make it foolproof is to put about a fourth of a cup to say quart, right? So if I was making a whole gallon of sauerkraut, I would use a whole cup of plain unsweetened kombucha. Kombucha is absolutely full of the very bacteria and yeast you want to colonize that sauerkraut. Ferment it, so pack it down, pour it on top, and that's going to it's going to cut the process in half. It's going to make your kraut ready in half the time. It's going to give it a wonderful flavor, a little more crispiness, and it's going to really prevent a lot of the bad bacteria from getting in there. I also use this when making cucumber pickles. I absolutely love dill pickles. So cucumbers are tricky because cucumbers tend to get mushy as they ferment. The way we prevent cucumbers from being mushy, first of all, cut off the bud end, the flower end of the cucumber, because it's the enzymes in that that usually will make it mushy. You cut that off, you're going to have crisper pickles any way you look at it. We're using a salt brine, which is just unchlorinated water and salt. It depends on how much you're making, how much salt. You can look that up online very easily to get those ratios. When I say salt, I'm just saying non-iodized. Iodine can be used like alcohol peroxide to kill germs. Iodine is going to screw up your ferment. Most people want to use kosher salt or sea salt or some kind of fancy rock salt. I'm telling you, any non-iodized salt will work. The cheap stuff from the grocery store just as well as the fancy stuff. Okay, yeah, you can get some more minerals and some nicer flavors from a nicer salt, but the cheap stuff is fine so long as it doesn't have iodine in it. You do a salt brine with your pickles. Okay, now I like to throw garlic in there, a lot of garlic. I love pickled garlic is one of my favorite things. So I throw in a lot of garlic. I like to throw in a bunch of hot pepper, usually just like crushed red pepper, like the pizza topping stuff, or it can be, a few chopped jalapenos or whatever I have on hand. I like some heat in there. I throw in some whole peppercorns and a lot of dill. I think dill is just wonderful. Other things you might want to put in there would be coriander, mustard seed is classic. Tarragon is very nice. So anyway, put that in there, brine over the top, and we want to put it into one more ingredient to make them crunchy. And that is going to be something that contains tannins. Traditionally, people have put in tea, black tea. People have put in an oak leaf, a grape leaf, anything that contains tannins, which will help keep it crunchy. Again, I use unsweetened kombucha. It works out really well. Your pickles really will be pickled within about 4 days to a week. If you use kombucha, 4 days are ready. If you just use a plain salt brine, a week. Taste them, see what you think about the crispiness, the crunchiness, and you're ready to go. From there, you can get into, kimchi. From there, you can get into all kinds of stuff. You can actually make some interesting, really interesting sauces and such by fermenting. I mean, Worcestershire sauce is a fermented sauce. Soy sauce is a fermented sauce. Like with soy sauce, you make miso first. Miso is a fermented bean paste that eventually becomes soy sauce. So there's a whole world of fermenting. And there's a guy named Sander Katz who's written some great books on fermenting. He's really the go-to, the guy, the fermenting guru. So check him out if you're really interested in this. So I make pickled radishes. It's one of my favorite things. Like I said, pickled garlic, pickled onions, pickled peppers, make my own vinegars. I make now with vinegar, you have to get what's called a vinegar mother. It's a lot like a kombucha SCOBY, but it's going to turn whatever you put it into vinegar. And you can use apple peels and make your own apple cider vinegar. You can make the world is your oyster. I make rice wines. I make regular wines. I brew beer. I, I love fermented foods. I make cheese. You can ferment, you can pickle sausages if you have a nice strong sour brine, more like vinegar really. Pickled eggs are wonderful. Again, you're going to pickle those with vinegar. They're not fermented. The vinegar is pre-fermented. The vinegar is so acidic, you can then pickle meats and eggs in it. So again, just experiment and enjoy, and wow, it's good stuff. So now let's get into Andrographis. Now, this is a chapter, well, this is coming from a chapter in my new book, The Encyclopedia of Medicinal Bitter Herbs. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm going to tell you about this really fascinating plant called Green Chiretta or Andrographis. Andrographis is really, it's new to Western medicine. It's an Indian herb. Been used in Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine for centuries. thousands of years, who knows? In their tradition, it's called the king of bitter herbs. In Western herbalism, we tend to call gentian the king of bitter herbs. But Andrographis may be the most strongly, sharply bitter herb there is. Don't let that scare you, because as I've said before, bitter herbs are really good for us. They're really good, especially for the liver. But Andrographis is fascinating because it has strong antiviral properties. In this era of COVID and bad flus and who knows what the heck's going to pop out of China next, herbs like Andrographis, Green Chiretta, could be lifesavers. And you could probably grow this one. I mean, it's really not that hard. It is what we call hepatic. It's liver protective. It stimulates the gallbladder. It aids digestion. It helps with stomach issues. It can help balance blood sugar and insulin. So in traditional Chinese medicine, considered a cold bitter, is especially supposed to be effective on the small intestines, large intestines, lungs, and stomach. They say it dries dampness, clears the heart, and eliminates toxicity. But here's a warning I saw in one of the Chinese medicine books I referenced. It is exceedingly, overwhelmingly bitter. It can injure stomach qi, and over 15 grams can cause nausea or vomiting. So, you know, this is a strong herb, but wait until I tell you how important this is. It stimulates the immune system. It is a really great antiviral, and not only does it settle an upset stomach, it is also an effective laxative. It also increases appetite. It can be very good to stimulate the appetite. It strengthens digestion. It diminishes flatulence. It's good for hyperacidity and biliousness. But what I really want to get into here is its antiviral properties. Here's a study. This herb has been widely studied by scientists. At least 676 studies have been published since the 1970s for its benefits. A study from Chile showed very great benefit for people with colds. A group of 158 people took Andrographis and measured their symptoms of headache, tiredness, earache, sleeplessness, sore throat, nasal secretions, phlegm, and frequency and intensity of cough. At day 4, a significant decrease in the intensity of all symptoms was observed for the Andrographis group. A double-blind, placebo-controlled study performed in Sweden treated 50 patients in the early stages of a cold with an herbal preparation of Andrographis. After 5 days, 68% reported complete recovery. This cured the common cold in 68% of people. This is a powerfully antiviral herb. In Scandinavian countries, Andrographis is commonly used for cold prevention and treatment. A double-blind, placebo-controlled study of using standardized Andrographis showed that the herb significantly decreased the duration and subjective severity of the common cold. Studies have also revealed that standardized Andrographis preparations significantly improve signs and symptoms of both the common cold and sinusitis relative to a placebo. So this has been really well studied. It has long uses, treatment of hepatitis, inflammation, digestive diseases, chronic fever. It's a very good herb for fevers, malaria, anemia, bronchial asthma, hepatotoxic disorders, it's liver disorders essentially, hepatitis, gastric constipation, dyspepsia, skin diseases, worms, epilepsy, ulcers, anti-urine, hypertension, melancholia, certain types of mental disorders, secretion of bile, blood purification, and diabetes. So, wow. I mean, Andrographis is, this is an herb we need to be using and growing. And I actually first heard about it in 2018. There was an article on the Grow Network called The Top 10 Immune Boosting Herbs. It's still on the website. You can pull this up. I highly recommend it. And this is when I first read it. It said, though you probably haven't heard of it before, Green Chiretta is a common herb in India and Sri Lanka that has been well studied and benefits the immune system. Studies show that it works to reduce your risk of developing a cold and help you recover faster. The evidence shows that the plant works to promote the ability of a variety of immune cells to fight off foreign invaders before they can establish themselves. So the Grow Network was on this in 2018, long before we had ever heard of COVID. I think now it is absolutely essential. All right, y'all, this is going to wrap it up for this week. Again, my new book is The Encyclopedia of Medicinal Bitter Herbs. You can find it on my blog as a PDF. I will email it to you just as soon as I'm notified that it's been purchased. Or you can buy it off of Amazon in paperback or ebook or whatever you choose. So check out my books. I hope you will enjoy them. I have a big announcement next week. Um, I got a new book that's about to come out, and I think it's going to be probably my best yet. I've also got a couple of big interviews coming up. So you're going to be seeing and hearing my voice in a lot of different places over the next few weeks. So I'll kind of keep you posted on that next week, give you some updates. Y'all have a wonderful week. If it's warm enough where you are, get out and enjoy it. If it's not, be hopeful because it will be soon. And it's almost time for Easter and that wonderful season of renewal and rebirth. And it's a great time of year. So have a great week, and I will see you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.